Hi there folks, it's time to take another look at all the books that Marvel is putting out this fall. And today, we're going to be talking about the X-Men book. Let's just take a look in our free magazine that Marvel put out. Okay, not there, not there, not there, not there. Are the X-Men in here? Hi there folks, it's me, Aaron, Professor Thorgy, your guide to all things geeky. Let's get right into it because there's some stuff that we gotta talk about with the X-Men. The big fear that everyone had when Marvel was relaunching their books is that the X-Men either wouldn't exist at all or they were going to be split off and put into their own separate universe. People were afraid of this because Marvel currently does not own the movie rights to the X-Men, and we all saw what they did with the Fantastic Four, who they also don't own the movie rights to. Yeah, they're nowhere to be seen in this free magazine. And so many people thought, okay, well that means that that's it, the X-Men are gone, they're going to be on their own separate universe, or they're just going to be gone completely. And the good news is, that's not happening. They are still around, they're sticking around, Marvel is still making X-Men books. Just, you know, not as many. Yes, in these previews, there are only 6 X-Men books listed, and as far as my entire comic book collecting life goes, that's an all-time low. And here's the thing about that. It might be an all-time low, but it's not just because of the movie rights. I'm sure that that probably had something to do with it. But that's not the only reason for this. When I was a kid, the X-Men were all the rage. And the reason for that is because they had their own cartoon. Now, back in those days, Marvel kind of stunk at promoting their own characters. They weren't nearly as good at as, say, DC, or even Image was doing a bit better of a job back in those days. But the one group that they actually were good at promoting was the X-Men because they had that cartoon, and Marvel knew that and they embraced it, and because of that, when I was a kid, the X-Men made up half of the books that Marvel was putting out. They knew that and they ran with it. They would put out anything with an X in it, alright? If you could put X in front of a team name, that was a thing. But here's the thing, before the 90s, before they just blew up in popularity, the X-Men weren't that big a part of the Marvel Universe. Like, if this was the whole Marvel Universe, this was how big the X-Men were in, which, that's a very scientific measurement, by the way. But yeah, it was just the fact that in the 90s, they blew up and they were incredibly popular. And so many people reading comics these days grew up in that time. They grew up in that time when they were huge, so the idea of the X-Men kind of going back to how it used to be, that's offensive to them. That makes it look like it's a witch hunt, like they are out to get the X-Men by taking them back and putting them back in just this small corner of the Marvel Universe. But, you know, I can fully understand that, but at the same time, to everything there's a season, turn, turn, turn. As much as I hate saying it, some things are popular for a generation, and then once that generation has passed, they're not nearly as popular anymore. And don't get me wrong, I'm an Avengers fan, have been my whole life, and I remember back when I was trying to argue as a kid with the X-Men fans, like, the Avengers are Earth's mightiest heroes, they're the best, how come you people don't understand how good they are? And I get that now these days, the Avengers are huge, they're giant, and I fully understand that ain't how it's gonna be forever. I fully get that in another 10 years, the Avengers are gonna be back down to like one book. And maybe in those days, I don't know, the Fantastic Four will have a Fantastic Four, 5, 6, and 7. Maybe they'll be big then. Who knows what's going to happen? But yeah, it kind of stinks that the movie rights are playing a bit of a role in this. But here's the other part of that. I work in a comic book store. The X-Men have indeed had a lot of books over the past couple years. Not a lot of them have sold, though. It is not just the movie rights. The cultural zeitgeist at the moment is still kind of like moving away from the X-Men. I mean, yes, Uncanny XMen sells well. All new X-Men sells well. That's about it. I wish I could point to other books, but yeah, that's about it. A lot of them will start off high, but then they will drop right after that. And Marvel has indeed tried to give these books a chance. They have been launching a ton of X-Men books over the past few years, and none of them have sold. And I wish that wasn't the case, because I've loved some of those books, but they haven't sold. Cyclops got his own series for the first time, it didn't sell. Nightcrawler got a new series, didn't sell. Storm finally got her own series for the first time. That seemed like a slam dunk to me. I was championing that thing and I was yelling and screaming at people to make a Storm series for the longest time, and then it happened, they finally gave us the book we wanted, and it didn't sell. And I started a freaking national campaign. I started a Save Storm campaign, and it didn't do anything. Like, it got people talking, it made some news sources, but yeah, it didn't save the book. The sales were still really, really low. And I wish that wasn't the case, but yeah, man, the X-Men just don't sell like they used to. So I understand why Marvel is kind of, you know, saying, well, it's not gonna sell. Let's get it down to just those core books that will sell. However, Marvel might not be winning the X-Men in the quantity field, but they're winning in the quality field with the X-Men because, yes, there are only 6 X-Men books coming out. However, every single one of those made me look at it and go, holy cow, this looks fantastic. They have probably the best writers out of any 6 books on these 6 books. I'm so hyped for these. So okay, let's go ahead and let's talk about them. Again, I'm just gonna whip out my handy dandy phone here because I'm not even gonna pretend like I have memorized all these. And I'm just gonna read with whichever one comes up first, which is Uncanny X-Men. Going back to number 1, yes, it's being drawn by Greg Land, and I have mentioned before that Greg Land is not my favorite artist. But Cullen Bunn is writing it. And Cullen Bunn, very talented, and he's very talented at the darker stuff. He's been writing the Magneto series right now, and the Magneto series is so good. He gets that character. He is fantastic on that book. And Magneto, yeah, he's no longer gonna have a book. However, Magneto will be leading this X-Men team, and it's still gonna be written by Cullen Bunn, so I still get to have my cake and eat it too with this new X-Men book. I get to still have Cullen Bunn on Magneto, and also I get to see Cullen Bunn write Sabretooth, who's going to be reverting back to his old bad guy roots, which, yeah, listen man, you tried something interesting by having Sabretooth be a good guy, it didn't work. Cool, he's a bad guy again, alright. And it's also going to have Psylocke on there. Psylocke was awesome on the Uncanny X-Force, which was also a darker team, so alright, cool, going back to that. Mystique, great character. Phantom X, also great character. And they're all going to be forming a team, and the tagline is, bigger threats require more threatening X-Men. So this sounds like it's going to be the X-Men that go up against the big stuff, and they're not nice about it. And I think Cullen Bunn is the perfect guy to write that, and I look forward to seeing how this team interacts. This looks like it will be an awesome team. And Phantom X is an anti-hero, so I can totally see him palling around with Mystique and Sabretooth and Magneto. Psylocke, on the other hand, I'm curious why she's there. So yeah, I want to see what's going on with that. Next up, all new Wolverine. We knew it was going to be X-23. We already saw that in the preview. I think that she is the best candidate for it, so I'm glad to see she's taking the role. And she is rocking that costume. That costume is perfect on her. She looks better in that costume than Wolverine looked in that costume. Controversial statements. So, but it's going to be drawn by David Lopez. David Lopez is great, awesome, good to see that. And it's being written by Tom Taylor. Okay, Tom Taylor wrote the Superior Iron Man series for Marvel, and it was whatever, but he wasn't really allowed to do anything on that book because Marvel came flat out to him and said, listen, this book's only going to be around for like 8 issues, and you're not really allowed to change anything, so just kind of tread water with it until then. So he did whatever he could. However, on series over at DC, where he was allowed to do more of whatever he wanted, because they gave him books that were set in alternate realities. They gave him Injustice, which, who expected a comic book tie-in to be good? He took that and he did something great with it. He nailed that book. And he also had a short run on Earth 2, which once again, alternate reality, he could kind of do whatever he wanted with it. Nailed it on that book. He was fantastic on both these. Now he gets an ongoing series, and this is a series that has no like end date on, like Superior Iron Man did, and he's allowed to do with his character whatever he wants. I cannot wait to see what he does with it. And yes, Wolverine is a darker character. Tom Taylor writes darker stuff. I think he is a perfect fit for this. I want to see what he is going to do with X-23 as Wolverine. I look forward to this so much. Next up, Deadpool. It's still being written by the same person who wrote Deadpool, and it's still being drawn by the same person who drew Deadpool. Alright, yeah! So in other words, Deadpool is not changing. However, it is worth knowing something about this new Deadpool, which is that Deadpool died. And they had a massive build-up to that. They had like a 6 months till Deadpool dies, 3 months till Deadpool dies, like that going on every single one of their covers. When he actually died, it was like a triple thick book. They charged $10 for it, which, bleh, seriously, Marvel, come on. Bleh. But yeah, $10 for that book. And I'm making the weirdest expressions doing these videos, but they charged $10 for that book. And yeah, how did Deadpool die in that? Spoilers. He died in the incursion that destroyed the entire planet. And I remember everyone in my comic book store, when we were flipping through that to see how he died, we went, but the entire planet died. And they're bringing the entire planet and everyone who died on it back. So why does his count? Why is his of any importance? And now we see this and we go, oh, it wasn't of any importance. He is coming back as soon as the planet comes back. And normally I'd be pissed. Normally I would be really upset with Marvel for having that long of a build-up to something that they knew wasn't going to stick or even last for more than a year. Like for something that they flat out knew, like, no, he's coming back. And I would be so ticked at them for charging $10 for something that they knew wasn't going to count. That would be infuriating to me. Except it's Deadpool. If any character is allowed to troll his audience, it's Deadpool. Like, I look at that and I'm just like, well, what would Deadpool do if he was writing his book? He would probably do the exact same thing. So, I can't really blame you, Marvel. Next up, the all-new X-Men is coming back, which confirms that yes, they are staying here in the present. At the end of Bendis' run on this team, the X-Men in the past are not going back to the past. They are sticking around in the present, except that Bendis is off the book. Whew. Bendis is off the book. Mark Bagley is drawing it. Mark Bagley was that first artist when I was a kid whose name I memorized because I enjoyed his stuff so much. And yeah, there are better guys out there now, but I still have such a soft spot in my heart for Mark Bagley, so I am glad to see he is on this book. And Dennis Hopeless is writing it. Now, a couple of things to point out about Dennis Hopeless writing this book. On the previous episode, when I talked about the Spider-Man books, I mentioned how his Spider-Woman might be my favorite book that Marvel is putting out. I love that book so much. And so, you know, of course, off the top of my head, I was like, okay, good. I'm glad to see him getting more work. In fact, in that first episode that I did, I mentioned there were 4 writers who were working for Marvel, and that they were guys who had not been getting nearly enough work, and I kept saying, these guys need to be on the big titles. And Dennis Hopeless was that 4th one. So he is now on one of the main X-Men books. I am so happy to see that happening. Good for you, man. But I'm also really happy about for another reason. Dennis Hopeless is the guy who wrote Avengers Arena. And Avengers Arena was all about the sidekick and teenage heroes of the Marvel Universe being put in a death trap where they were forced to fight each other to the death, Battle Royale style. And I found that disgusting. I hated that idea. I think that idea was like, that was nearly offensive to me. The fact that you're taking these beloved characters, especially heroes that are beloved of a younger audience, and going, we'll make them fight to the death. That is just insulting to me. I think that is just flat out wrong. I can't believe that they did that. However, I don't like to judge things without reading them. I'll still judge the idea behind it without reading it. I think the idea behind it was garbage. However, I'm not going to judge the book itself without reading it, so I did read it, and it was written by Dennis Hopeless, and it was the first time I had ever even heard of Dennis Hopeless, and I read it and I went, oh my god, this is really good. He took that idea and did as best of a job with it as he possibly could, and it showed. And it made me look at Dennis Hopeless and go, holy cow, this guy's got great potential. Now, when the trade for that book came out, I picked it up and it had an introduction from Dennis Hopeless himself. And he said that when he went into Marvel to pitch his idea, they said, all right, tell us whatever you want. Pitch whatever idea you want. And he pitched an idea of a group of young heroes, and they were out there growing, exploring themselves, learning who they were as people, and just discovering their own futures, and just growing and maturing as characters. And he did mention that at one point, one of the storylines he would have would be where Arcade traps them and like says, okay, now you guys have to fight to the death. But that wasn't going to happen. They were going to fight against him, they would win, and they would come out triumphant. And when he pitched this idea, the Marvel editor said, that idea, the whole death trap thing, forget everything else you said, that's the whole idea for the book. That's the entire series that you're going to do. And he hated that. He said that he could not stand the fact that they were doing that. Like, he felt the same way about the idea that I felt about the idea. And when I look at this all-new X-Men team that he is writing, that's exactly what his idea was. That idea of a group of young heroes out there, growing, discovering themselves, finding their own future, that is exactly what this book is. They're stuck here in the present, their future is completely unwritten, they have a blank slate, they can do whatever they want with it, and they're just traveling around, discovering their own lives. This is exactly the book that he wanted to make, and I think it's amazing that he finally gets to do that. So yes, hat is off to you, Dennis Hopeless, for sticking with it, and you finally get to do the book that you want. Way to go. Next up, wow, I really should have made that like the end of the episode. That's kind of an emotional note to go out on. Too bad. Anyway, Extraordinary X-Men is the next book coming up. And this is now going to be the main X-Men team, and is being written by Jeff Lemire. Oh my god! Marvel, how did you get him on X-Men? That is awesome! That guy, I think is a perfect writer for X-Men. I cannot wait to see what he does with that. And this team is comprised of Storm, love Storm, Iceman, alright, Colossus, way to go, Nightcrawler, love that guy, the young Jean Grey, seems pretty cool to put her on the team, Magic, I like Magic, but I haven't really liked what Bendis has been doing with her. There's a surprise. And now she's going to be on another team being written by someone else, so cool. Put her in the hands of someone else, because she's a great character, great power set. Can't wait to see what you do with her. And Old Man Logan. We'll get to that in a second, but holy cow, Old Man Logan, wow. So alright, this team, awesome. I think there are some great characters on there. I can't wait to see the character interactions that you have. Jeff Lemire, great writer. In fact, I think he is really fit to do these X-Men books. And the redesigns of the costumes, for the most part, I really dig them. I think there's a great look with this team. I like that they all have this like unified look with their costumes forming an X with that little like V-neck thing going down. And, like the little like undercut. You can't see what I'm doing with my hands here, but if you look at the costumes, you'll see what I'm talking about. They form an X. I think that's really cool. The only one that I'm not that big a fan of is Storm, because to me, Storm should either dress like royalty or like a runway model, like almost like a, mega superstar almost. But this look for Storm, it's more like weekend Thor. Like, she looks really casual to me. She looks almost like, hey, if Storm was just going to the mall on the weekend, this is what she would dress in. So, I wish it was a little bit more regal, but it's still okay. I do really like Nightcrawlers though. Nightcrawlers I think is awesome, because Nightcrawler's always been like a swashbuckler, like more of an adventurous character. So I love that you're giving him chainmail because it makes it look more like an old-timey costume, so that's awesome. So okay, really looking forward to the Extraordinary X-Men, and the last X-Men book that's coming out, Old Man Logan. It's being written by Jeff Lemire. Jeff Lemire, perfect guy to be on that book. That is the #1 correct answer for who should be writing Old Man Logan. Wow, that is perfect. And he's being assembled with the same writer that he worked on Green Arrow with. I did not like the New 52 Green Arrow until Jeff Lemire started working on it. The storyline that Jeff Lemire did for that character was mind-blowing. It was perfect. That was one of the best Green Arrow things to come out in a long time. Nailed it. I cannot wait to see what he does with this character. And also, I love that Logan is still dead, but is now this alternate reality Old Man Logan. I don't really like that he is in the current timeline, because the whole point of Old Man Logan is that it's like he saw all of his friends die, he's living in this world that's being run by supervillains, and now you're taking him out of all that and putting him into a timeline where his friends are still alive. It's like, well, what's he really got to be that upset about now? But I heard Jeff Lemire in an interview, and he was describing how much that can mess you up in the head. It's like, he killed all of his friends in his timeline, and now and now he is in a timeline where they're all alive again. That's going to mess with him incredibly. And I was like, oh yeah, that actually would make sense. I can see how that would screw you up. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what they're going to do with this character. Now, a lot of people might be looking at this and asking, well, why don't you just bring the regular Wolverine back? And there's a reason for that. Remember how I was talking about how the X-Men books don't really sell that well anymore? Yeah, as much as I hate saying it, Wolverine was one of those guys who was a massive superstar, but now these days, yeah, the first issue of his book sells, but then every issue after that drops so much. Like, I remember when we got in our #1 issue of Wolverine, and it just sat there on the shelf. It just sat there, and we had like cases of that thing in the back, and we were like, please tell me someone's gonna come and buy this, that we're not taking this big of a bath on Wolverine #1. His books just don't sell that much anymore. So if you're going to do something with a character, you gotta change it up. So making X-23 the new Wolverine makes a lot of sense to me, but making Old Man Logan a book makes a lot of sense to me too, because as I said, Wolverine himself doesn't sell that much anymore, except for one book. Whenever people come into my store and they ask, do you have Wolverine? There's only one book they ask for. They don't ask for any of the other stuff Mark Millar did. They don't ask for any of the Jason Aaron run, which was incredible. They don't ask for the original Chris Claremont stuff. No, the only Wolverine book that people ask for in my store is Old Man Logan. I swear to you that is true. Every single day someone comes into my store and goes, do you have Old Man Logan? And that's the only Wolverine book people ever ask me for. This just makes perfect sense to me. This again just says to me, Marvel knows what its audience is asking for. It knows what's selling well, and it's going to embrace that. So, yeah man, I can't wait for this Old Man Logan book. So yes, again, I have completely destroyed my voice by talking way too loud for way too long and way too fast. So I'm going to end this episode now. That's it for the X-Men books. Come back next time when I talk about all the Guardians of the Galaxy books that are coming out. But until then, let me know what you think. Which of these X-Men books are you looking forward to the most? Leave that in the comments down below. Also, if you could give another X-Men their own book or another X-Team their own book during this relaunch, which one would you choose? Leave both those answers in the comments down below. If you want to see either of the other videos that I have done so far, click on them here. And if you want to see more from me, make sure to follow me on Twitter and Tumblr right there. And again, I am just depleted of all my strength, so I'm just gonna bow out now. Bye everyone.